The grand chamber stretched wider than most planets. Floating platforms held representatives from 847 different worlds. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystalline shells. They all served one purpose: to maintain the Galactic Hegemony Council's power over known space. Ambassador Kirovel stood before the central platform. His blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights as he presented his report. His species, the Vexarians, had served the Council for 3,000 years. They were good at finding new worlds to add to the tribute system. High Executor Threngax, Kirovel began. His voice translated instantly into 800 languages. We have discovered a new species in Sector 447. They call their world Earth. It orbits a yellow star they name Sol. The High Executor leaned forward in his throne of living metal. Threngax had ruled the Council for 6 centuries. His face resembled carved stone, gray and ancient. 4 eyes studied the holographic display that appeared between them. Earth rotated slowly, blue and green and beautiful. Tell us about them, Threngax commanded. Kirovel touched his datapad. Information flooded the chamber's screens. They call themselves humans. Population 8 billion. They achieved faster-than-light travel only 5 cycles ago. Primitive by our standards, but not without potential. The planet shows exceptional resources. Rare minerals in the crust. Abundant water. Diverse biological specimens, another council member spoke. Her name was Velkara, and her species had paid tribute for 5,000 years. What of their military capability? Minimal, Kirovel replied. They possess nuclear weapons and basic energy shields. Their largest warships measure only 300 meters. We estimate their entire fleet numbers less than 2,000 vessels. Standard intimidation protocol should suffice. Threngax nodded slowly. The tribute system had worked for 12,000 years. The formula never changed. A new species was discovered. The Council sent ships. The species saw the Council's power and accepted the terms. They paid tribute: resources, labor, military restrictions, and monitoring. In exchange, they gained access to galactic trade routes and Council protection from hostile forces. Every species accepted. They had no choice. Prepare the standard tribute demand, Threngax ordered. 40% of planetary resources annually. 30% reduction in military forces. Monitoring stations in major population centers. 100,000 workers for off-world projects each cycle. The usual terms, Kirovel confirmed. Assigned diplomatic enforcer Qualmoth to handle the negotiation. He has successfully processed 234 first contacts. Not one has refused. Qualmoth rose from his platform. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected light like a mirror. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, making them incredibly strong despite their slim appearance. He bowed to the High Executor. I am honored, Qualmoth said. When shall we depart? Immediately. Take 12 capital ships. Show them our strength. Make them understand that resistance brings only destruction. As you command. The Council chamber hummed with approval. Another world would join the hegemony. Another source of tribute would flow into Council coffers. The system was perfect, unchanging, eternal. Kirovel remained standing as the Council prepared to move to other business. High Executor, if I may add one observation. Speak. The humans have an unusual history. Their planet has no unified government. They war among themselves frequently. Their development has been marked by constant conflict. Even achieving space travel, they maintain separate national entities rather than planetary unity. Threngax waved a hand dismissively. All primitive species suffer from such divisions. Once they see our power, they unite quickly. Fear is an excellent motivator for cooperation. Of course, High Executor. I simply thought it worth mentioning. Your diligence is noted. Dismissed. As the Council returned to debating trade routes and tribute quotas, none of them considered that humanity's fractured history might mean something different. They assumed division meant weakness. They never imagined it might mean something else entirely. A species that had learned to survive by fighting impossible odds. In the hegemony's long history, they had encountered peaceful species and aggressive species. They had found civilizations of great wisdom and others of pure emotion. But they had never encountered a species that had spent its entire existence locked in a struggle with itself and its world. The tribute fleet began assembling at the edge of Council space. 12 massive warships, each capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Qualmoth reviewed his prepared speeches, the terms of acceptance, and the procedures for installing monitoring stations. He had given this presentation 234 times before. He expected the 235th would be no different. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light space, heading toward the small blue world called Earth. Behind them, the Council returned to their usual business, already calculating how much tribute Earth would provide. None of them knew that everything was about to change. Captain Doyen Park was drinking coffee when his ship's sensors screamed an alert. He nearly dropped his cup as he rushed to the command console. The patrol cruiser EAS Vigilant was running a routine check near Mars when 12 massive objects appeared on the long-range scanners. "Report," Doyen barked at his sensor officer. "Sir, 12 unknown vessels just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're massive. Each one is at least 3 times larger than our biggest carrier. They're holding position at the edge of the system." Doyen felt his heart racing. This was it, humanity's first real contact with alien life. They had found small probes before, even recovered some crashed vessels, but this was different. This was a fleet. Open all communication channels. Standard first contact protocols. Before his communications officer could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up simultaneously. The transmission bypassed their security completely. A face appeared, silver-skinned and angular, with eyes that seemed too large for its narrow head. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said. The translation was perfect, speaking in Korean, English, Mandarin, and dozens of other languages at once. "I am Diplomatic Enforcer Qualmoth of the Galactic Hegemony Council. Your world has been evaluated and found acceptable for integration into the galactic community. This is a great honor. The terms of your acceptance have been prepared. You have 7 of your solar days to prepare for the arrival of tribute collection vessels. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. This transmission will repeat." The screen went dark. Then the message played again. And again. Doyen stared at the screen in disbelief. 7 days, tribute, compliance mandatory. Those words echoed in his mind as he immediately opened an emergency channel to Earth Command. Within 3 hours, every leader on Earth knew about the message. President Yoona Choi sat in the emergency session chamber in Geneva, surrounded by representatives from every nation. The chamber, designed for climate conferences and peace negotiations, now hosted discussions about humanity's survival. "Play it again," President Choi ordered. The message replayed on the giant screens. Qualmoth's face, cold and certain, delivered the same words. When it finished, Defense Minister Han Bin-Kwan spoke first. "The terms are unacceptable. 40% of our resources? That would cripple our economy. Reduce our military by 30% while aliens install monitoring stations in our cities? We would be defenseless." Science Director Sora Kim pulled up additional data on her tablet. "I've analyzed the transmission. The technology is far beyond ours. The way they bypassed our encryption, the simultaneous translation, the precision of their faster-than-light arrival. We're outmatched, so we just surrender?" Hanbin demanded. "Give up our freedom without a fight?" Admiral Taeyang Lee stood up. He was old for a military officer, with white hair and a face marked by decades of service. "I've reviewed our tactical capabilities. Our entire fleet combined would struggle against even one of those ships. They have 12. If they decide to attack, we cannot win a conventional war." The room fell silent. President Choi looked around at the faces of humanity's leaders. Fear, anger, desperation. She saw all of it. "Are we certain they mean what they say?" asked the European Union representative. "Perhaps this is a negotiation tactic. Maybe we can bargain for better terms." Communications Officer Gina Bay, who had been furiously working on her laptop, suddenly spoke up. "Madam President, I've accessed their public databases. They transmitted their historical records along with the demand. I think they wanted us to see this." New images appeared on the screens, files detailing hundreds of other species. Each one showed the same pattern. First contact, tribute demand, acceptance. The files went back thousands of years. "Every species accepted," Gina continued, her voice shaking slightly. "Every single one except..." She pulled up 3 files. 3 species tried to refuse or negotiate. The records show what happened next. The images were brutal. Orbital bombardment, cities burning, military forces destroyed within hours, puppet governments installed. "They're showing us this as a warning," Admiral Taeyang said quietly. They want us to know we have no choice. President Choi felt the weight of billions of lives on her shoulders. She thought about her daughter, about all the children of Earth, about the future humanity had fought so hard to build. 7 days to decide. Submit or be destroyed. We need to hear from our people, she said finally. This decision affects everyone. We'll hold a planetary referendum. Every person over 16 gets a vote. The question is simple. Do we accept the hegemony's terms or refuse them? That's madness, Hanbin protested. The people don't understand the military implications. They'll vote with emotion, not logic. Perhaps, President Choi replied. But this is their future. They deserve a say in it. We only have 7 days, someone reminded her, then we vote fast. Spread the information everywhere. Make sure every human knows exactly what we're facing and what the choice means. No secrets, no hidden information. Full transparency. The decision was made. Within hours, every screen on Earth displayed the hegemony's message and the historical files. The question appeared in every language, accept or refuse. The debate that followed was unlike anything in human history. Families argued. Nations debated. Social media exploded with opinions. Some said survival mattered most. Others said freedom was worth dying for. Religious leaders, scientists, philosophers, and ordinary people all weighed in. In coffee shops and living rooms, on street corners, and in virtual meeting spaces, humanity discussed its future. The vote counters ran constantly, showing the split shifting back and forth. Captain Doyen Park, still on patrol near Mars, watched Earth through his view screen. The planet looked so peaceful from here, so beautiful. He had cast his vote already. He knew what was coming. As Day 6 arrived, the hegemony fleet began moving closer to Earth, taking up positions around the planet. Qualmoth sent another message. Your decision time approaches. Choose wisely. President Choi watched the vote counter in her office. The numbers were stabilizing. She felt tears in her eyes as she saw what humanity had chosen. The 7 days ended. 5 billion humans had voted. The result was clear. 89% had refused the hegemony's terms. Humanity had made its choice. Diplomatic enforcer Qualmoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive vessel hung in orbit above Earth, surrounded by 11 other capital ships. Below him, the blue planet turned slowly, unaware that its fate would be decided in the next few hours. He had done this 234 times before. The pattern was always the same. The new species would gather their leaders, board his ship with nervous dignity, and sign the acceptance documents. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they tried to negotiate minor changes. But they always signed. Time? He asked his second officer. The 7-day period ended 3 minutes ago, Enforcer. Qualmoth nodded. Open a channel. Let us begin the ceremony. The communications officer worked his console. Channel open, Enforcer. They are responding. Put them on screen. The view screen flickered to life. Qualmoth expected to see a large delegation, perhaps in some ceremonial chamber. Instead, he saw a military bridge. Human officers stood at various stations, and in the center stood a single man in uniform. Admiral Taeyang Lee looked directly into the camera. His face showed no fear, no nervousness. Behind him, through the windows of his ship's bridge, Qualmoth could see the rest of Earth's fleet. Every vessel humanity possessed had mobilized. They hung in space, small and primitive compared to hegemony ships, but present nonetheless. Qualmoth felt a flicker of surprise. This was unusual, but not alarming. Sometimes species made a show of force to preserve dignity before surrendering. He had seen it before. Greetings, Admiral, Qualmoth said smoothly. I am prepared to receive your delegation aboard the Eternal Dominion. The acceptance ceremony will be brief. Bring your planetary leaders and... We will not be coming aboard your ship, Admiral Taeyang interrupted. Qualmoth paused. Direct interruption was rare but not unheard of. I understand this is difficult. However, the ceremony must be conducted according to Council protocols. I assure you, no harm will come to your delegation. You misunderstand, the Admiral replied. We are not coming because we are not surrendering. A longer pause. Qualmoth felt confusion. This was not following the script. Admiral, perhaps you do not fully comprehend the situation. The tribute terms are not negotiable. Your planet cannot stand against Council forces. This is not a choice you can refuse. And yet, Admiral Taeyang said calmly, we do refuse. Admiral, I urge you to reconsider. We have shown you the historical records. You know what happens to species that resist. Your military cannot hope. 2. We have received your demands. Admiral Taeyang interrupted again. His voice remained steady, almost conversational. Humanity has deliberated. We held a planetary vote. Over 5 billion people participated. The result was clear. We have prepared our response. Qualmoth leaned forward slightly. Finally, some sense. They had discussed it and reached the rational conclusion. Excellent. Then you understand that acceptance is the only logical path. I am pleased your species has chosen wisdom over. Our response is as follows. The Admiral continued. Qualmoth waited for the lengthy explanation. Perhaps they wanted to express their objections for the historical record. Perhaps they needed to explain to their people why surrender was necessary. He had heard it all before. Pride required some words before submission. Admiral Taeyang Li looked directly into the camera. Behind him, every human officer stood straight, faces set with determination. The Admiral spoke clearly, his voice carrying across space to the hegemony fleet. No. The transmission ended. The screen went black. Qualmoth stared at the empty screen. His second officer looked confused. The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. No? Qualmoth repeated as if the word made no sense. Did he say? No. Yes, Enforcer. Just that one word. Contact them again. There must be some misunderstanding. Perhaps a translation error. The communications officer tried multiple times. They are not responding, Enforcer. The transmission was deliberate. They ended it from their side. Qualmoth sat down in his command chair. In 234 first contacts, he had never encountered this. Species pleaded. Species negotiated. Species wept and argued and tried to bargain. But they never simply said no and ended the conversation. What do they hope to achieve? His tactical officer asked. They cannot win. Even if their entire fleet attacked at once, we would destroy them within hours. Qualmoth activated his direct link to the Council. High Executor Threngax appeared on his private screen, his stone-like face impassive. Report, Enforcer. Has Earth accepted the terms? High Executor. They refused. A long silence followed. Explain. I attempted to initiate the standard acceptance ceremony. Their military leader delivered a one-word response. No. Then ended communication. Did they provide justification? Demands for better terms? Threats? Nothing, High Executor. Simply no. Threngax's expression did not change, but Qualmoth could sense the fury building. The Council had ruled for 12,000 years. Species did not say no to the Council. This cannot be permitted, Threngax said coldly. If word spreads that a species refused and faced no consequences, the entire tribute system collapses. You will make an example. Fire one shot. Not at the planet, but close enough that they feel it. Show them the cost of defiance. Then offer them one more chance to accept. Understood, High Executor. Qualmoth turned to his weapons officer. Charge the main cannon. Target the atmosphere above their capital city. Do not strike the city itself, but make sure they see the power we possess. Fire when ready. The Eternal Dominion's primary weapon began charging. Energy gathered in the massive barrel, enough force to vaporize a mountain. Below on Earth, sensor stations screamed warnings. People in New Geneva looked up at the sky, knowing death approached. The weapon fired. A beam of pure energy lanced through space toward Earth's atmosphere and stopped. The beam hit something invisible and froze, suspended in midair like a painting. Energy crackled and dispersed across a shimmering barrier that suddenly became visible, covering Earth like a soap bubble made of lightning. Qualmoth shot to his feet. What is that? Unknown, Enforcer. Scanning now. It appears to be some kind of planetary defense grid, but that's impossible. They don't have the technology for... Obviously they do. Qualmoth snapped. How long will it hold? Calculating. based on energy signatures. Enforcer, this shield shouldn't exist. The power requirements alone would drain their entire planet's energy in minutes. Below on Earth, Chief Engineer Suman Oh watched her screens in the Seoul Defense Station. The grid was holding, but barely. Power plants across 3 continents were overloading. They had maybe one more shot before the whole system collapsed. But they had built something impossible, and that mattered. Qualmoth stared at the shield surrounding Earth. The humans had said no, and somehow, impossibly, they had prepared to back up that word. Everything was about to change. Chief Engineer Suman watched the power grid fluctuate wildly across her screens. The Seoul Defense Station hummed with so much energy that the air itself felt electric. Warning lights flashed red across every panel. Grid status? She barked at her team. 73% capacity. Her assistant Minho replied, sweat dripping down his face. The shield absorbed that shot, but we're bleeding power fast. 3 nuclear plants just went into emergency shutdown. If they fire again, when they fire again, Suman corrected him. She had no illusions. The aliens would not stop at one shot. Above Earth's atmosphere, Qualmoth recovered from his shock. A planetary shield was theoretically possible, but it required technology centuries beyond what his scouts had reported. How had these primitive humans created such a thing in 7 days? All ships, he commanded. Full barrage. Concentrate fire on the shield's northern hemisphere. Find its breaking point. 12 capital ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles rained down on Earth's shield. The barrier lit up like a star, absorbing impacts that should have shattered continents. In Seoul, Suman watched her power reserves plummet. Reroute everything. Civilian power, military reserves, everything. Across Earth, cities went dark. Hospitals switched to emergency generators. Traffic lights died, but the shield held. In New Geneva, President Yoona Choi stood in the command center watching the bombardment. Every impact made the lights flicker. Every explosion in the sky reminded her that millions could die if the shield failed. Admiral Taeyang Lee stood beside her, his face grim. The shield will fail. Maybe in minutes, maybe in hours, but it will fail. We need to commit the fleet. Our ships cannot penetrate their defenses, Defense Minister Hanbin protested. It would be suicide. Perhaps, Admiral Taeyang agreed. But we did not build that shield just to hide behind it. We built it to give us time. Time to show them that we will fight. Captain Doyen Park sat in his fighter cockpit aboard the carrier EAS Indomitable. Around him, thousands of other pilots prepared for launch. They all knew the odds. Human fighters against alien capital ships was not a fair fight. But fair fights were for people with options. Humanity had none. All wings, this is Admiral Lee. The voice came through their headsets. The shield is failing. When it falls, they will bombard our cities. We cannot allow that. We must damage their ships enough to make them reconsider. I will not lie to you. Most of us will not return. But our families are down there. Our world is down there. If we do nothing, Earth falls. So we fight. Doyen checked his weapons one last time. His fighter carried 2 missiles and an energy cannon. Against a hegemony cruiser with shields and armor plating, it was like attacking a tank with a kitchen knife, but a kitchen knife could still cut if you aimed for the right spot. Launch all fighters, Admiral Taeyang ordered. The sky above Earth filled with human ships. Thousands of small fighters, like a swarm of angry insects, streaked toward the alien fleet. Qualmoth watched them come with disbelief. They are attacking? With those? His tactical officer said. Enforcer, those craft are barely armed. They cannot penetrate our shields. Then destroy them and be done with it, Qualmoth ordered. The hegemony ships opened fire with point defense systems. Human fighters exploded by the dozens, but they kept coming, and they were not attacking randomly. Doyen led his squadron toward the nearest cruiser. Target the shield generators on the port side. 3-ship attack pattern. We only get 1 run at this. They dove through a storm of enemy fire. Doyen saw fighters explode around him, pilots he had trained with, friends he had known for years. But he focused on his target. The shield generator glowed on the cruiser's hull, a small bump that radiated energy. Now, he screamed. 3 fighters fired simultaneously. Their missiles, primitive by alien standards, struck the exact same point. The generator exploded. A gap appeared in the cruiser's shields. Secondary wave, go. Doyen pulled up hard as more fighters dove through the gap. They fired at the exposed hull, small weapons pecking at armor plating. It should not have worked, but hundreds of small damages add up. A coolant line ruptured, an armor plate cracked. A sensor array exploded. Qualmoth watched in growing alarm as his cruiser reported system failures. How are they doing this? They are coordinating their attacks perfectly, his tactical officer reported. Hitting weak points, exploiting any gap in our defenses. Enforcer, they are using suicide tactics. That last fighter deliberately rammed our secondary weapons array. Qualmoth saw it happen again. A human fighter, too damaged to escape, turned and accelerated directly into another cruiser's engine port. The explosion was small compared to the massive ship, but the engine sputtered and died. These humans were insane. But their insanity was effective. All ships increase point defense fire. Do not let them close to ramming distance. But there were too many human fighters and not enough time to target them all. The hegemony fleet had shields and armor designed to withstand capital ship weapons. They were not optimized for swarms of small, fast-moving targets willing to die for every meter they gained. In Seoul, Suman watched the power reserves hit critical levels. The shield is collapsing. How long? President Choi demanded over the communication line. Minutes at most. The southern hemisphere grid just failed. We are down to emergency power. Above, Qualmoth saw the shield flickering. Concentrate all fire on the shield's weak point. Break through and target their capital city. One demonstration strike. Show them the cost of continued resistance. The Eternal Dominion's main cannon charged again. This time it would not miss. Doyun saw the massive weapon powering up. He was too far away. Even at full speed, he could not reach it in time. He watched helplessly as the barrel glowed brighter, preparing to crack Earth's last defense and rain fire on millions of innocent people. Then he remembered something his flight instructor had taught him years ago. If you cannot reach your target in time, change your target. All remaining fighters near the flagship, Doyen transmitted. Forget the other ships. Hit the Eternal Dominion. Everything you have. Aim for the main cannon's power coupling. 50 fighters turned as one and dove toward the flagship. Qualmoth barely had time to react before they were on him. Explosions rippled across his ship's hull. His shields flared and held, but the power drain was enormous. Enforcer, we must divert power from the main cannon to reinforce shields. Qualmoth hesitated for one fatal second. In that second, a human pilot named Ji-Young Kim, her fighter already on fire, accelerated past the shield's threshold and crashed directly into the main cannon's energy coupling. The explosion was spectacular. The main cannon went dark, its firing sequence aborted. Alarms screamed across the Eternal Dominion's bridge. Qualmoth stared at the damage reports in horror. A single pilot had just done what should have been impossible. Below, the shield finally collapsed, flickering out of existence like a dying flame. Earth lay exposed, but the hegemony fleet was damaged, scattered, and reeling from an attack that should never have worked. Admiral Taeyang Lee transmitted one more time. All ships, press the attack. Make them remember this day. The battle raged on, impossible and desperate, as humanity proved that sometimes courage and creativity matter more than superior technology. The battle transmission spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every civilization with communications technology picked up the signals from the Sol system. What they saw made them stop and stare. On the mining world of Krathnor, workers paused their excavation equipment to watch screens hastily set up in the caverns. The Krathnor had paid tribute to the hegemony for 8,000 years. They knew the drill. New species discovered, tribute demanded, tribute paid. It always ended the same way, except this time was different. Look at them, whispered Valkyrie. A senior miner. They are so small. Their ships are like insects against the hegemony cruisers. Insects that sting, another worker replied, pointing at the screen. 3 human fighters had just crippled a hegemony destroyer by targeting its shield generators in perfect coordination. That should not be possible, Valkyrie said. The hegemony shields are designed to withstand capital ship weapons. They were not designed to withstand hundreds of small attacks on the exact same point, the other worker observed. Watch, they learn. Every time they attack, they improve their tactics. The broadcast showed Captain Doyen Park leading a squadron through a gap in the Eternal Dominion's defenses. His fighter was damaged, trailing atmosphere, but he fired his last missile directly into a weapons array before pulling away. The array exploded, taking 2 others with it. Workers throughout Krathnor watched in silence. They had never seen anyone fight the hegemony before. They had forgotten it was possible. On the diplomatic world of Velshara, Ambassador Narration watched from her emergency shelter. She had escaped Earth just days before the hegemony arrived, sent to establish Earth's first galactic embassy. Now she watched her people die, but they were not just dying. They were fighting in ways the galaxy had never seen. "Ambassador," her assistant said quietly, "the other species want to speak with you. They are asking questions." What kind of questions? They want to know how Earth built a planetary shield in 7 days. They want to know how your fighters coordinate so perfectly. They want to know why your people choose to fight instead of surrender. Nari looked at the screen showing the battle. Half of Earth's fleet was destroyed. The shield had failed. Thousands of pilots were dead. And yet the survivors kept attacking, kept finding new weak points, kept refusing to give up. "Tell them," Nari said, "that humans have spent their entire existence fighting each other, fighting their environment, fighting to survive on a world that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways. We never had the luxury of peace. So when the hegemony demanded our surrender, we simply did what we have always done. We fought." The message went out across diplomatic channels. Within hours it reached hundreds of worlds, and on those worlds people began to talk. In the hegemony council chambers, High Executor Threngax watched the battle reports with growing alarm. 8 hours had passed. 8 hours. Tribute enforcement actions usually lasted 20 minutes, maybe an hour if the species was particularly stubborn. "Status of the fleet?" he demanded. 4 ships severely damaged. 3 more reporting minor damage. The Eternal Dominion's main weapon is offline. Estimated human casualties exceed 50,000, but their remaining forces continue to engage. Threngax felt something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. Why do they persist? They cannot win. Even with their clever tactics, they are losing ships at a rate of 10 to 1. "Perhaps they know something we do not," suggested Council Member Velkara. "Perhaps they have reinforcements coming. Scans show no additional forces. This is everything they have. They are spending lives like water for no strategic gain." But Threngax was wrong. There was a strategic gain. Every minute the battle continued, every impossible tactic humanity employed, every small victory against overwhelming odds was broadcast across the galaxy. And the galaxy was paying attention. On a trade station in neutral space, representatives from a dozen species gathered around viewing screens. They watched a human pilot named Minho deliberately crash his burning fighter into a hegemony cruiser's engine core, disabling the ship. They watched the cruiser, dead in space, become a target for dozens more human fighters. They sacrificed one ship to disable a vessel 1,000 times its size, one observer said. "That is not military doctrine. That is desperation." "No," disagreed another. "That is calculation. They know they cannot win with conventional tactics, so they invent new ones. Every hegemony ship they damage makes the rest of the fleet more cautious. They are not trying to win, they are trying to make victory too expensive." The battle continued. Admiral Taeyang Li, coordinating from the EAS Indomitable, watched his fleet's numbers dwindle. But he also watched the hegemony fleet pull back slightly, becoming more defensive. "They are afraid," his tactical officer reported. "They outnumber us, outgun us, and are still winning. But they are afraid." "Fear is a weapon," Admiral Taeyang replied. "If we can make them doubt, we can make them hesitate. And hesitation is all we need." He transmitted new orders. The remaining human ships, fewer than 800 now, began a new pattern. Instead of attacking, they spread out, maintaining distance, forcing the hegemony fleet to keep their shields up and their weapons ready. Qualmoth recognized the tactic immediately. "They are conserving their forces, making us expend energy maintaining battle readiness. We can maintain shields for weeks," his tactical officer said. "They gain nothing, perhaps, but they also give us nothing to target. If we pursue, they will lead us into another ambush. If we attack the planet, they will attack us again, and we will lose more ships." For the first time in 12,000 years, a hegemony enforcer considered retreat. On Earth, President Yuna Choi watched the battle from the command center. The casualties were devastating. Whole squadrons gone, brave pilots who would never come home. But the alien fleet had stopped advancing. They floated in space, uncertain, Madam President, Communications Officer Gina Bay called out. We are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Dozens of species want to communicate with us. Tell them we are busy, President Choi replied. Ma'am, they are not asking for help. They are offering it. President Choi turned, surprised. What? Small things. Medical supplies. Technical specifications. One species just transmitted their shield technology to us for free. Another sent tactical data about hegemony weak points. Ma'am, the galaxy is helping us. In his flagship, Qualmoth received a priority message from High Executor Threngax. The High Executor's face showed something Qualmoth had never seen before. Doubt. Enforcer, you will disengage and return to Council space immediately. High Executor, we can still— No, you will withdraw. The situation has changed. This battle is being broadcast across the galaxy. 3 minor species have already stopped their tribute payments. If we continue, if we destroy Earth completely, we make martyrs of them. And martyrs inspire revolution. Qualmoth wanted to argue, but he knew the truth. They had won the battle, but lost something far more important. They had shown the galaxy that the hegemony could bleed. Understood, High Executor. We withdraw. The hegemony fleet began powering down weapons and preparing for faster-than-light travel. The human ships maintained their distance, watching warily. As the alien ships vanished into the stars, Captain Doyen Park sat in his damaged fighter and wept. Not from sadness, but from relief. They had survived. Against all odds, humanity had survived. Below on Earth, millions looked up at the sky where the battle had raged. The stars looked different now. They were no longer empty. They were full of possibilities. High Executor Threngax had ruled the Galactic Hegemony Council for 600 years. In that time, he had faced rebellions, economic crises, and diplomatic disasters. But he had never faced anything like this. The council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 847 worlds shouted over each other, demanding answers, making accusations, and questioning policies that had stood unchanged for 12,000 years. Order, Threngax commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Order in this chamber. Slowly the representatives quieted, but the tension remained. The Earth situation is contained, Threngax began. Enforcer Qualmoth has withdrawn the tribute fleet. Damage to our forces was minimal. The humans suffered far greater losses. Then why did we withdraw? Demanded Ambassador Kiravel. If we were winning, why not finish what we started? Because, Velkara answered before Threngax could respond. The entire galaxy watched us struggle against a species we claimed was primitive. Every world that pays tribute saw that the hegemony can be hurt. Reports were flooding in from across Council space. On Krathnor, mining operations had slowed by 30% as workers discussed whether their tribute obligations were fair. 3 minor species in Sector 12 had formally requested renegotiation of their tribute terms. The Velshara were openly debating a referendum on continued council membership. The word Earth had sent no was spreading like a virus through civilizations that had forgotten what resistance meant. We must make an example, insisted Tactical Commander Vrentok. Send the full council armada to Earth. Not 12 ships, but 1,200. Demonstrate that defiance brings only destruction, and create martyrs, Velkara argued. If we annihilate Earth now, every species will see us as monsters. The tribute system depends on perceived benevolence. We tell species we protect them, guide them, offer them galactic community. If we destroy Earth for saying no, that illusion shatters. The illusion is already shattering, Threngax said quietly. We have reports of protests on 17 worlds. Trade routes are being disrupted as merchant vessels express solidarity with Earth. Some of our own member species are sending supplies to the Sol system. Treason, Vrentok spat. Arrest them. Arrest entire worlds, Velkara replied. We rule through intimidation backed by military might. But our military is spread across hundreds of sectors maintaining order. If multiple species rebel simultaneously, we cannot suppress them all. The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence as the representatives absorbed this truth. The hegemony was vast and powerful, but it was also overstretched. The tribute system worked because everyone believed resistance was futile. Earth had proven it was not. On Earth, President Yuna Choi addressed her battered planet. The battle had ended 3 days ago. The casualty reports were still coming in. 60,000 dead, mostly military, hundreds of thousands injured. The power grid remained unstable. Food supplies were running low in some regions, but Earth was free. Citizens of Earth, President Choi began, her speech broadcast globally. We have paid a terrible price for our freedom. Every life lost weighs on my conscience, but I want you to understand what we accomplished. We showed the galaxy that resistance is possible. We proved that determination and courage can challenge even overwhelming power. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The hegemony will come again, perhaps with more ships, more weapons, but we will be ready, and we will not face them alone. Science Director Sora Kim had spent the past 3 days analyzing every transmission Earth had received from across the galaxy. The data was astonishing. Madam President, you need to see this, Sora said, pulling up a holographic display. We have received messages from 133 different species. They are sending us technology, medical supplies, tactical information. Some are offering military alliances. Why? Defense Minister Hanbin asked. Why would they help us? They barely know us, Patan. Because we did what they were afraid to do, Sora explained. Most of these species have paid tribute for thousands of years. They forgot they had a choice. We reminded them. Ambassador Narration, still on Velshara, was coordinating this support network. She met with representatives from species Earth had never heard of, species that wanted to break free from the hegemony, but feared doing it alone. We are forming a coalition, Nari reported in her daily transmission to Earth. Nothing formal yet, but the framework is emerging. Species that want independence but need allies to achieve it. Earth would not lead this coalition, but our resistance inspired it. The message resonated across council space. On Krathnor, Velkri the miner stood before thousands of fellow workers. We have mined these tunnels for 8,000 years. Every shipment goes to the hegemony. They tell us it is for our protection, for our benefit, but Earth has shown us the truth. The tribute system exists to make the council wealthy and keep us dependent. What do you propose? Someone shouted from the crowd. Fight them like Earth did? We will be destroyed. Perhaps, Velkri replied. Or perhaps if enough of us refuse, they cannot destroy all of us. Earth fought alone and survived. Imagine if 100 worlds refused together. Similar conversations occurred across the galaxy. The council's carefully maintained system of controlled fear was cracking. In the council chamber, High Executor Threngax convened an emergency session. Only senior members attended, those who had served for centuries and understood the delicate balance of power. We have 3 options, Threngax said. First, we destroy Earth completely as a warning. Second, we negotiate reduced tribute in exchange for their public acceptance of council authority. Third, we acknowledge Earth as an independent entity and hope the situation stabilizes. The first option creates martyrs, Velkara said. The second shows weakness. The third might destroy us. All options are terrible, Vrentok admitted. But doing nothing is worse. The longer we wait, the more species will question their tribute obligations. Threngax looked at each council member. He saw fear in their eyes. For 12,000 years they had been untouchable. One word from one species had changed everything. We will offer Earth reduced tribute, he decided. 15% of resources instead of 40. No military restrictions. No monitoring stations. In exchange, they publicly accept council membership and acknowledge our authority. They will refuse, Velkara predicted. Then we will have tried diplomacy before resorting to force. It will buy us moral authority with wavering species. The offer was transmitted to Earth within hours. President Choi read it carefully, then called her cabinet. They are desperate, Admiral Taeyang observed. This offer is everything we could have hoped for before they attacked. And now it is not enough, President Choi said. If we accept any tribute, even reduced tribute, we legitimize their system. We cannot do that, so we refuse again? Hanbin asked. They will send their full armada next time. Perhaps, President Choi agreed. But Nari tells me that 13 species have contacted her about forming a formal alliance. If we accept this offer, we abandon them. If we refuse, we give them hope. The decision was made quickly. Earth would refuse again, but this time with a counter-offer. Formal recognition of Earth as an independent entity with full diplomatic rights. No tribute, no restrictions, no council oversight. When Threngax received Earth's response, he felt the weight of 12,000 years of history pressing down on him. The tribute system was ending. The only question was whether it would end through evolution or revolution, and revolution, as Earth had shown, was messy and violent and impossible to control. 6 months passed since the Battle of Sol, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. Captain Gina Bay stood on the bridge of the rebuilt EAS Indomitable, watching the stars stream past as her ship patrolled the border between Coalition space and Hegemony territory. The coalition of free worlds had grown to 47 member species, with more joining every week. "Captain, we are receiving a distress signal from the Krathnor system," her communications officer reported.
"Hegemony forces are attempting to enforce tribute collection."
"The Krathnor are requesting assistance." Gina did not hesitate. "All ships, battle stations. Set course for Krathnor. Maximum speed." The Indomitable was not alone anymore. 3 other Earth vessels traveled with her, along with ships from 5 different species. The Coalition fleet was small compared to the Hegemony Armada, but it was growing. In the Krathnor system, Valkyrie watched the sky with hope and fear. The mining world had stopped sending tribute 3 months ago. The Hegemony had finally come to collect by force. 6 Hegemony cruisers hung in orbit, weapons charged. "This is your final warning," the Hegemony commander transmitted. "Resume tribute shipments or face bombardment." Before Valkyrie could respond, new ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Coalition fleet appeared between the Hegemony vessels and Krathnor, shields up, weapons ready. "This is Captain Gina Bay of the United Earth Navy," she transmitted on open channels. "Krathnor is under Coalition protection. You will withdraw immediately." The Hegemony commander hesitated. 6 ships against 8. The numbers favored the Coalition slightly, but more importantly, the entire sector was watching. Another battle would further weaken the Hegemony's authority. "You are interfering with Council business," the commander replied. "The Krathnor have formally requested independence. That makes it our business. Withdraw or we engage." For 5 tense minutes, both fleets held position. Then the Hegemony ships began pulling back, powering down weapons. "This is not over," the commander transmitted. "The Council will not permit this rebellion to continue." "We are not rebelling," Gina replied calmly. "We are simply exercising our right to exist freely. Tell the Council that if they wish to discuss terms, the Coalition embassy is open for negotiations." The Hegemony fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished. On Krathnor, millions of workers watched the sky and realized they were free. On Earth, President Una Choi met with the Coalition Council aboard Unity 1, a massive space station built in neutral territory by 7 different species working together. The station symbolized everything the Coalition represented: cooperation, equality, and shared purpose. "The Hegemony is weakening," Ambassador Narration reported. 47 species have left their tribute system. Another 30 are negotiating for better terms. The Council's revenue has dropped by 60%. "Are they likely to attack?" asked Valkyrie, now representing Krathnor in the Coalition Council. "Eventually," Admiral Taeyang Lee replied. He had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Coalition Defense Forces. "They cannot allow this situation to continue, but they are calculating the cost. Every battle we win costs them more than ships. It costs them legitimacy." Defense Minister Hanbin pulled up tactical displays. "Our intelligence suggests the Hegemony is preparing a major offensive. 200 ships aimed at Earth specifically. They believe if they destroy us, the Coalition will collapse." "They might be right," President Choi admitted. "Earth is the symbol of resistance. If we fall, others may lose hope." "Then we must ensure Earth does not fall," said Ambassador Sora, representing the Velshara. "My people are sending 50 ships to reinforce Earth's defenses. The Krathnor are sending 20. Every Coalition member is contributing resources." President Choi felt tears in her eyes. 6 months ago, Earth stood alone against impossible odds. Now dozens of species stood ready to fight beside them in the Hegemony Council chambers. High Executor Threngax faced the inevitable. The tribute system that had sustained the Council for 12,000 years was dying. The question was no longer whether it would end, but how violently. "We can still salvage this," Tactical Commander Vrentok insisted. "One decisive strike against Earth and the Coalition fragments. Or," Velkara countered, "we lose 200 ships and unite the Coalition against us permanently. Threngax, the galaxy has changed. Species that once feared us now see us as tyrants. We can continue fighting a losing war, or we can adapt." "Adapt?" Vrentok said with contempt. "You mean surrender?" "I mean survival," Velkara replied. "The Hegemony can still exist. We still have wealth, technology, and hundreds of loyal worlds. But we must become something different. Not rulers demanding tribute, but partners offering services. Threngax listened carefully. He had ruled through fear and intimidation for 6 centuries. The idea of changing that fundamental approach felt like admitting defeat. But Velkara was right. The old system was unsustainable. What do you propose? We contact the coalition, offer a peace conference, recognize their independence in exchange for trade agreements and diplomatic relations. The species that remain loyal to us can continue under the tribute system if they choose. But we stop forcing compliance, that is surrender. Vrentok spat. No, Threngax said slowly. That is evolution. The galaxy is changing. We change with it or become extinct. The decision split the council. Some members supported negotiation. Others demanded total war. Eventually, a compromise emerged. The hegemony would send a diplomatic delegation to the coalition, but simultaneously prepare for military action if negotiations failed. Ambassador Narration received the hegemony's request for a peace conference with cautious optimism. This could be a genuine offer or a stalling tactic while they prepare their offensive. We attend the conference, President Choi decided. But we continue building our defenses. Trust, but verify. The conference took place on Unity 1 with representatives from the coalition and the hegemony meeting, face to face for the first time as equals. The negotiations were tense, complicated, and often frustrating. But slowly, an agreement took shape. The hegemony would recognize coalition independence. In exchange, the coalition would not interfere with hegemony member worlds that chose to remain loyal. Trade would continue between both groups. A neutral zone would separate their territories. And most importantly, both sides would commit to diplomatic resolution of future disputes. It was not perfect. Many in the coalition wanted the complete dismantling of the tribute system. Many in the hegemony wanted to crush the rebellion completely. But both sides were tired of conflict. Captain Doyen Park flew patrol duty near Earth as the peace treaty was signed. He thought about the battle 6 months ago, about the pilots who had died saying no to the hegemony's demands. Their sacrifice had led to this moment. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Lee. His communications officer reported Admiral Taeyang appeared on his screen, looking older but satisfied. Captain Park, the treaty is signed. Earth and the coalition are officially recognized as independent entities. We did it. Doyen felt a wave of emotion. They had survived. Against impossible odds, through sacrifice and determination and one simple word, humanity had earned its place among the stars. What happens now, sir? Doyen asked. Now we build. The coalition needs time to grow stronger. The hegemony needs time to adapt. Peace is fragile, and there will be challenges ahead. But we have proven something important. That courage and conviction can change the galaxy on Earth. President Yuna Choi addressed her planet one final time from her office. 6 months ago we faced a choice, surrender our freedom or fight for it. We chose to fight. Thousands died making that choice meaningful. Today their sacrifice bears fruit. Earth is free. The coalition is free. But freedom is not the end of our journey, it is the beginning. She paused, looking at the camera with determination. The galaxy is vast and full of challenges. Some species still suffer under oppression. Some regions still know only conflict. Earth cannot solve all these problems alone. But we can stand as an example. We can show others that saying no to injustice is possible. We can prove that even the smallest voice speaking with absolute conviction can echo across the stars and change everything. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, beings of countless species watched her speech and felt hope. The word no had changed the galaxy. But the real change came from what followed. The determination to build something better, the courage to help others find their own voices, and the wisdom to understand that true strength comes not from domination, but from unity. Earth had learned this lesson through hardship. Now they would help teach it to the galaxy. Commander Suman, rebuilding Earth's defense grid stronger than before, looked up at the stars and smiled. The galaxy had seemed so frightening 6 months ago, full of unknown threats and impossible challenges. Now it seemed full of possibilities. The hegemony still existed. The coalition was young and vulnerable, and peace remained uncertain. But something fundamental had shifted. Species across the galaxy had remembered that they had choices, that resistance was possible, that freedom was worth fighting for. And it all started with one word. No, a simple word, spoken with absolute conviction, that reminded the galaxy of a truth it had forgotten. That power ultimately rests not with those who demand obedience, but with those brave enough to refuse.